You don't want money. You want relief. You want the feeling that the constant buzzing inside your chest finally shuts up, that you can stop rehearsing failure, stop comparing yourself, stop begging the universe to be nicer to you than reality. So you repeat it. I want to be rich. I want to be rich. I want to be rich. And then you act surprised when nothing meaningful changes because you confuse desire with discipline. This video is about the law of money attraction. Not the cute version that sells candles and affirmations, the brutal version that tells the truth about what money actually responds to. And more importantly, it tells the truth about what you're avoiding when you keep chasing the fantasy that thinking hard can replace building your life. If you're the kind of person who has ever stuck a sticky note under your pillow or whispered financial affirmations into the mirror like it's a ritual, you're not stupid. You're not uniquely cursed. You're doing something much more common. You're using belief as anesthesia. You use it to numb the pain of not being ready yet. And the cost of anesthesia is that you never wake up. Let's start where most people refuse to look. The law of attraction, especially the money version, is sold like a shortcut through the soul. It's marketed as if money is a passive animal. Like if you throw the right thoughts in the air, it will obediently run toward you. But money is not a vending machine. Money is a relationship. Money is a market signal. Money is a vote from other people's time, risk, and trust. Money is what happens when you solve something real for someone else, repeatedly, reliably, and at a scale that's bigger than your mood. When you say, I want to be rich, and you do nothing but talk to yourself, you are not attracting money. You're attracting the feeling of progress without the inconvenience of effort. You're creating a loop where the mind pretends it's acting, while the body stays safe in the same habits. That's why it feels good for a short while. Affirmations can be soothing. They can create a warm fantasy of becoming. But soothing is not training. Fantasy is not strength. And strength is what money eventually rewards. Let me give you a micro story you probably recognize. You wake up, you're tired, your bank account doesn't match your self-image. You open your phone, or you open a book, or you watch some motivational video that says you can reprogram your reality with intention. You feel a spark, you feel hope, your brain relaxes for a moment because it has a story. I'm doing it now. I'm close. I just need to think correctly. Then the day arrives. The day demands boring things. Calls you avoid, skills you never built, phone numbers you never dial, offers you never send, budgeting you never do, the hard truth that you need to be competent before you can be confident. So you don't do the boring part. You go back to the mantra. You go back to the fantasy. You keep feeding the loop with words because words don't ask you to be accountable. And then, after months, your life looks exactly the same. No real income growth. No real social leverage. No real skill stack. But you're not willing to admit the obvious, so you invent a new explanation. Maybe you didn't believe enough. Maybe you didn't do it correctly. Maybe you missed a step. Maybe you need more videos, more courses, more rituals. This is how the law of attraction becomes a mental cult, not because the idea is evil, because it protects you from the pain of ownership. Ownership is where the real work starts. If you tell yourself I'm attracting money, you don't have to confront how you handle discomfort. You don't have to confront whether you can follow through when you don't feel inspired. You don't have to confront whether you can tolerate slow progress without escaping into another dream. Money doesn't care if you feel powerful. Money cares if you can deliver outcomes that other people trust. Now here's the psychological mechanism most people hide from themselves. When you focus on having money instead of building value, you're not just chasing cash. You're trying to repair your identity using an external object. You're trying to become safe through acquisition. Deep down, you may believe something like this. If I were rich, I would finally be allowed to relax. I would finally be seen. I would finally stop being the person people dismiss. I would finally stop feeling behind. I would finally stop feeling stupid for trying. That belief is not a strategy. It's a wound. And the wound is why the law of attraction feels so addictive. Because it offers emotional permission without behavioral change. But behavioral change is not optional. It's the bridge between fantasy and reality. Without it, money will never meet you. Not because the universe is cruel, but because your actions never produce the signals money responds to. Money responds to competence and to character under stress. It responds to reliability, to usefulness, to repeatable processes, to integrity that holds even when no one is watching. So when your mind is obsessed with money, but your life is not built on skill, ethics, systems, and patience, you're not emitting attraction, you're emitting chaos. Even if you try to mask it with affirmations, your behavior leaks the truth. It leaks in how you talk to clients, it leaks in how you handle follow-ups, it leaks in how you treat deadlines. It leaks in how you treat other people's time. It leaks in whether you can admit you were wrong and fix it. People can feel that. Markets can feel that. Partners can feel that. And money, as an outcome, reflects what others experience when they interact with you. Now let's go deeper, because this is where the uncomfortable truth lives. A lot of people use the law of attraction as a way to avoid discipline, not consciously, not with a manifesto, but in practice, it becomes a rebellion against reality. Discipline is ugly at first. It requires discomfort. It requires delayed gratification. It requires you to show up on days when your motivation collapses. It requires you to be consistent when no one is clapping. When you're addicted to the idea of attraction, you're addicted to ease. You're addicted to the concept that you can get what you want with less suffering. But money is not a reward for wishing. Money is a reward for solving. That solving costs something. Usually it costs your comfort. Sometimes it costs your pride. Sometimes it costs your willingness to be mediocre while you learn. When you skip the cost, you don't get the outcome. Instead, you get something else. You get a psychological dependency on hope. You get trapped in a loop of craving and disappointment. And this loop is not neutral. It makes your nervous system weaker. It makes you less resilient. It makes you more likely to panic when results take time. It makes you more likely to abandon plans when the first obstacle appears. So you spiral into newer dreams, newer affirmations, newer 7-day challenges, newer gurus who sell the same promise with different packaging. It's always the same structure. You pay money to feel hope. You get a temporary emotional high. You return to your life with the same habits. The real world doesn't care about your high. You feel frustrated. You buy another product to cover the frustration. If that sounds familiar, it's because it's a pattern, not an event. Now I want you to notice something you probably never admitted out loud. When you say, I want to be rich, what are you actually trying to make stop? Maybe you're trying to make anxiety stop. Maybe you're trying to make shame stop. Maybe you're trying to make the fear of being ordinary stop. Maybe you're trying to stop feeling powerless in your family story, or your dating story, or your career story. If you trace your obsession with money to its emotional core, the problem becomes clear. Money becomes a weapon against your inner discomfort. So you keep telling yourself you're doing the right thing. You keep repeating the mantra. You keep imagining wealth. But inside, the fear doesn't shrink. It only changes costumes, because the fear is not money related. It's identity related. And identity doesn't update through affirmations. It updates through evidence. Evidence is built by action, by practice, by repetition, by finishing what you started, by learning skills that make you useful, by confronting your failures instead of rewriting them as destiny. Now let's talk about what money actually is psychologically. Money is not just paper or numbers. Money is social proof that you can create value in a way other people choose to support. That's why money behaves like it avoids certain situations, even if you don't believe in energy. It avoids certain people because certain people can't sustain what money requires. Money does not cling to chaos. Money does not reward dishonesty. Money does not stay long with careless behavior, impulsive spending, or reckless shortcuts dressed up as confidence. Look at the pattern of quick wealth scams, gambling, and fake investment schemes. Those aren't random. They attract people who are emotionally hungry for easy transformation. They attract people who want the reward without the boring steps. They're always the same psychological profile. People who are impatient with learning, impatient with skill building, impatient with ethical risk, impatient with long-term thinking. The scheme gives them a story. It gives them a promise that bypasses discomfort. It gives them a villain they can blame for why they're not rich yet. And then it harvests their money and their belief. The harsh part is that most victims don't lose money only. They also lose self-trust. They lose the ability to believe their own decisions. So after the scam, they're not just poorer. They become more mentally fragmented. They chase another quick fix because the old one confirms a cynical belief. Nothing works, so maybe the universe needs a different spell. That's how misinformation becomes a lifestyle. But consider the other side. Consider the people who become wealthy slowly and stay wealthy. They don't always look dramatic. They rarely announce big spiritual breakthroughs. They often look boring because their behavior is consistent. Their wealth is built on something that can withstand time, skills, systems, and character. They're not perfect. They're just accountable. They do the work even when it's not sexy. They build a sales process. They build a portfolio. They document their processes. They learn how to retain customers. They treat money like feedback, not like destiny. And when stress arrives, they don't panic. They don't collapse into escapism. They solve problems. They adapt. They invest in learning again. That's what money responds to, not the chant. The ability to handle reality. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. You might be saying, fine, money requires work. But what about energy? What about intention? Here's the uncomfortable answer. Intention without discipline is just self-soothing. Energy without output is theater. Belief without systems is just a way to delay responsibility. Intention is useful only when it fuels behavior. When it becomes a substitute for behavior, it becomes a scam, even if you're the one scamming yourself. You don't need to destroy hope. You need to stop using hope to avoid action. So let's get practical, but I'm not going to give you a shallow checklist. Because the real problem is psychological. You need to stop asking the wrong question. You keep asking how to get more money. That question keeps you fixated on money as a goal object. Instead, you need to ask a question that forces honesty. What problem am I solving for other people? Not in theory, in practice. Are you solving a problem with your job, your business, your service, your creative work? Are you reducing someone else's cost, risk, effort, confusion, or pain? Are you improving their life in measurable ways? If your answer is vague, you're not just broke, you're irrelevant to the market that pays. And relevance is not a moral judgment, it's a mechanical truth. Money flows toward usefulness. Now, I want you to feel how brutal that is, because it means you can't escape by saying you have a good heart. You can have a good heart and still be financially helpless if your heart isn't attached to competence. This is where many people start rationalizing. They say things like, but I'm a good person. Why don't I deserve more? Or they say, I'll make money after I feel ready. Or they say, the universe will bring opportunities to me when it's time. All those thoughts are emotional anesthesia again. They protect you from the fear of being judged as incompetent. But money does not pay for your potential. Money pays for your track record. Your track record is built through repeated delivery, which leads to another question that will sting because it cuts deeper than competence. Have you systematized your value? Most people are stuck because their income is built on their presence. It's built on time for money. It's built on hours spent. That structure is fragile. It means if you stop working, the money stops. It means your entire financial future depends on your energy and your mood. And moods are not reliable resources. The wealthy build systems. They build processes. They build products. They build repeatable offers that can work even when they are not directly doing every step. So ask yourself honestly, if you disappeared for a month, would your income continue, or would it collapse into silence? If it would collapse, you're not attracting money. You're renting your livelihood. You're trading your life for survival money. That can work short term, but it rarely builds wealth. It builds exhaustion. When people follow the law of attraction mindset, they often avoid system building because systems require long-term commitment and precise learning. Systems require you to get feedback, revise, and endure boredom. Systems also require you to accept that your feelings won't lead the way. Data leads the way, and data doesn't care if you believed hard enough. Now here's the darkest layer. The law of attraction for money often functions as a protection against humiliation. Because if you admit you need skills, you might have to admit you were not good enough yet. If you admit you need discipline, you might have to admit you lacked consistency. If you admit you need to solve real problems for real people, you might have to admit you've been thinking too much about yourself. But the mantra is easier. I want to be rich. I will attract money. The issue is the universe, not me. It's a psychologically convenient story. It keeps your self-image intact, and your self-image is fragile. That's why you can't bear direct responsibility. Responsibility feels like punishment. So you turn it into a spiritual drama where you are powerless to the universe but powerful in belief. It's a clever trap. Because the person you become while you're trapped is not becoming strong, you're becoming dependent. Dependent on hope, dependent on content, dependent on the next insight to rescue you from the discomfort of building. And then you're shocked when you can't move. Now, I want to say something else that will make you uncomfortable if you're used to sugar coated success narratives. If you keep saying, I want to be rich without changing how you behave, you might actually be training yourself to fail. Every time you choose fantasy over effort, you teach your brain that effort is optional. You teach your nervous system that discipline is punishment and imagination is freedom. Then, when you face real challenges, you experience them as threats rather than tasks. You avoid, you procrastinate, you blame, you search for another technique. This is how self-sabotage wears the mask of spirituality. You might call it alignment. You might call it manifestation. But if the result is repeated avoidance, then it's not alignment, it's avoidance. Avoidance is still a choice. Now let's bring in the money paradox. People who become rich quickly through schemes often crash quickly. That's not just bad luck, it reflects weak inner structure. Fast money can bypass the need to develop character. But once the money is gone, character remains. And if character was weak, the collapse is violent. That's why you see sudden wealth followed by chaos, impulsive spending, reckless business moves, dramatic relationship collapses, addiction, paranoia, debt. It's like pouring gasoline on a fire that already existed. The fire was inside all along. Emotional instability, lack of discipline, inability to think long term, inability to tolerate uncertainty. Money didn't create the fire, it exposed it. So if you're relying on wealth fantasies to fix your inner instability, you're trying to heal a wound with a temporary decoration, and decorations don't cure trauma. Now I'm going to challenge a belief many people carry silently. The belief is that money will make you safe. But safety isn't created by ownership. Safety is created by inner competence and self-trust. Money can amplify your traits, good and bad. It doesn't transform your psychology into a new person. If you're irresponsible, money will make your irresponsibility more expensive. If you're dishonest, money will tempt you with bigger opportunities to lie. If you're anxious and impulsive, money will become a new object of fear. If you're emotionally immature, money will become a new trigger for conflict. So the real question is not how to attract money. The real question is how to become the kind of person who can keep money without destroying themselves. That's the difference between chasing money and becoming a stable builder. Now let's talk about morality, because some of you want to pretend you're spiritually serious while still being secretly unethical. You can't make money without interacting with trust. Trust requires ethics. Ethics isn't a luxury, it's part of the operating system. If your value delivery depends on manipulation, you might earn briefly, but you won't build loyalty. Without loyalty, your system is fragile, and fragile systems collapse. So if you're thinking of taking shortcuts, if you're thinking of using vague promises, if you're thinking of selling dreams instead of solutions, you're already gambling with your future. Your psychology will eventually catch up, because even if you can fool customers, you can't permanently fool yourself. You will feel the guilt, you will feel the dissonance. You will overspend on compensation. You will sabotage long-term growth because you can't respect your own actions. Money doesn't just follow attraction. Money follows coherence. Now here's a turning point that